Okay, we are live. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Yeah.
It's gonna come up very soon. Let's see. How do we do this thing? Stream.
Yeah, you're live now.
Yep, I know. I'm gonna give you the link.
I got it.
You got it? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Why is there 0 views? Strange.
What happened, brother?
There you go. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Saturday Live Night. Where are you watching from? Let us know. Let's see where people are watching from. Some people, somebody commented about the Uyghur protest. Okay, Benikra. Assalamu alaikum, bro. How you doing? Were you at? I know you didn't come today. Next time, inshallah. Germany, Washington, Canada, Kashmir. Somebody's watching from Kashmir. Abu Dhabi, Birmingham Sharif, Belgium, Turkey, UK, Australia, not bad. Saudi Arabia, Mozambique. Someone's watching from Syria, New York, Salim, East London. What else? Morocco, very nice. Where else are people watching from? Norway, Minnesota, USA, Lahore, Pakistan. Someone said kitchen, so you're watching from your kitchen. Brilliant. Ontario, Canada. Nice. Slough. Such interesting and exotic places, and then someone writes Slough. Okay, Greece. Hey, Greece. Which part of Greece, if you don't mind us asking? Manchester. Holland. Trinidad. What is that? How do you pronounce that?
No.
Germany. Oxford. Good. You want to give any thoughts today about the protest? How you felt? How it went?
It was good. I felt all good. What do you think?
There is an energy, there is a vibe, there is a culture, there is a feeling that you had in the crowd that was electric. There's this electric feeling. People were on edge, people were excited, people were passionate. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, it's a protest, there's some things. It was like those people were ready. And there's thousands of people at this protest. And we had speeches from many powerful speakers. We had some eventful events. It was just amazing. You had the Chinese, at the top. I saw them. I saw them just they're watching us, and then they're trying to move the curtains and trying to stare at us and stuff like this. Yeah. Any videos? Yep, the videos are Iman channel. You find the videos on Iman channel.
We'll bring him out on my
Someone said hijab was a maniac and I loved every second of it. Do you know what?
Sometimes there's a time, there's a method behind the madness. There's a time for being a maniac.
There's a madness behind the method, you mean?
Both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, bro? You gotta be crazy sometimes, bro. And
imagine, the CCP has these trolls who are sitting there, and they got these little wumao. You call them wumao, yeah. There's about supposedly 2 million of them. They're paid. They sit there. So their job is to go onto the internet and to look at people and to comment and to say, oh, China's great. China's done breast prosperity. Uyghur genocide is fake. Imagine if them sitting there and one of them eating his noodles, and he comes across that video. He'll probably choke on his noodles because he's like, that guy that guy's gonna eat us. Like he probably thinks this guy's gonna eat, like, Wamao and stuff like this. The Chinese took off their flag, the bloody cowards. How cowardly is that? Oh yeah, let's take off our flag, then they won't know where our building is. What is that? What is that? Honestly, that's, what that is. That is a layer of stupidity that is so yeah, bro. What is that? Oh, let's just take off our flag, innit? So no one knows we're here. Idiots. All right. Sister Ghanama. Very good. All righty. Should we start allowing people to come in the studio?
Ready for action,
Let's
bro.
talk to the people. Let's talk to the people. Let's talk to the public. I'm going to be giving out the link. Just like last time, guys, please, can you guys switch on your camera, number one? Nobody's going to be allowed in the studio unless your camera's on. That's for a security reason. Number two, post your question in the private chat before we let you on. And we're going to give, obviously, priority to people who haven't been on before, number one. And two, are asking questions which haven't already been addressed, because we seem to be sometimes bringing on the same people every week. And other people, they contact me on Twitter, they contact me on email. I was waiting, I never entered, blah, blah, blah. So let's not have that. Yeah, let's have these people speak, and one question at a time, inshallah. And as always, we're going to stick to the truthfulness of Islam. And we don't want to go to, speak about just random topics. So nice dude joined us, ITZ 702. Please switch on your camera. Post your question as well. Tired, yeah?
It's tired, isn't it?
Tired.
Oh. Sorry.
No one's posting any questions, and people are not switching on their cameras. Anyone not switching on their camera, I'm going to have to kick you out of the studio. Camera on.
Some of them are left.
Some of them are left. If you switch on your camera, but then we can't see your face, I'll just kick you out of the studio. Like that.
Give him a chance, bro.
No chance.
Okay.
Nice dude, can you please post your question in the private chat?
No, come out. Sam, speak.
Okay. Hijab wanted you to speak, brother.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Where are you calling in from, my brother?
I'm from Canada right now, so yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
So
I love Canada.
I got a quick. I can ask you guys any question, right?
No.
Okay. Well then,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna. So I basically been getting. I know this might sound stupid to you guys, but like I've been getting like these really like kind of intrusive thoughts, like these stupid doubts about like hyperskepticism, right? Like it's like, how do we know that the Sahaba, like, they believed in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Like it might sound stupid, but like it keeps messing me up. And I was wondering, how do you deal with hyperskeptical doubts? Like, how do you get rid of them?
Well,
How can we prove
whatever turns up in your mind without evidence can be waved away without evidence, because it does not have any basis. So it's kind of like, I'm doubting if my father's really my father, or if he's actually an alien that came on Earth and pretended to be my father. It's just absurd ideas that people may have. So if there's no evidence for something, you just have to absolutely ignore it. There's nothing to it. You just literally hand wave those things away.
So, but how would you respond to people who say like that oral testimony isn't like a valid source of knowledge? Because I've heard that argument a lot from some people.
Well, I'll respond by simply saying to them that is false. That is a flat-footed assumption. That's an assertion that cannot actually be maintained. If that was true, human history, human sociology, human language, human anthropology, human understanding of basic day-to-day events. Oh, I can't trust the BBC, or I can't trust CNN, or I can't trust this guy's word, or that. Like, this is absolute nonsense. Human beings depend upon testimony for the large part of their knowledge. So anyone that comes up with something like that, you just literally have to give them a few corrections in terms of their daily behavior, which relies upon testimony, right? You can't survive without testimony.
All right. Okay. Thank you. That kind of clears it up.
What are you going to add to the testimony thing?
Like when it comes to the Quran and the Hadith and stuff, you've got to remember, like one time I was doing something called, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, it's called a CELTA course.
Oh yeah,
it's teaching English as a foreign language.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
one of the
yeah,
things
yeah.
I've done some time ago. And what I found interesting is that in language, there's a difference between the lexical items or the words and the graphemes and the phonemes or the phonetic, the way something sounds, you see. So there's something called a Cambridge Learning Dictionary. As an example, there's more learning dictionaries, but the Cambridge Learning Dictionary, what it does is it will tell you how something sounds. And there's a whole range of symbols. Some of you may be aware of them, some of you may not be aware of them, which tells you how to pronounce certain words and letters. So for example, the word London, yeah, it's London, yeah? But if you pronounce it as it sounds, it doesn't sound like that. It's like London. It could be many things. Like could
that's
be
very
anything.
interesting.
Right. So on the O, there's something called a Schwa. The Schwa is a symbol. It's like an inverted E, and that's like the sound. Now, how do we know that? We know that only through oral transmission. Like if we had only written words around us, which was not facilitated by oral transmission or a chain of oral transmission, it would be unintelligible.
So
to us.
like a knife, we would call it knife.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe we wouldn't even know how to even do that. Because, like I said, many of Polish and Polish, you have something like, you have the issue of homophones and homonyms and homographs. So you got two words which sound the same but spelled differently, two words that are spelled differently but sound the same, and two words, like, for example, Polish and Polish. They spell exactly the same, but they sound completely differently. How do you know that? How do you know X from Y? You know because of the oral transmission. How do you know how to say Polish in that way or London in that way? Because of the oral transmission. So the moment you start saying, well, oral transmission has no value, then you are, for all intents and purposes, putting language or spoken language into jeopardy, like into disrepute. Because how is it that we can speak to each other in phonetic pronunciation, which wouldn't have been known to us unless it was taught to us through someone else that we heard it from? And this is, if you go back to the Quran, you know, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. You know, that the process that Allah had with Adam is that he taught him the words, and then he told him to speak it to the angels. So there was a listening and then there was a speaking component. If these things are not present, then language cannot be carried forward. And so for those who say that oral transmissions are invalid, then languages will be a very big problem for you to try and solve. Secondarily, there's lots of, you know, key, you know, texts in the Western world, ancient and contemporary and medieval, all of which rely almost solely on oral transmission. Like Homer's Iliad, for example. It's only known through oral transmission. So how do we know it? We know it through oral transmission. And so with all of these things and more, those who say, well, oral transmission has no value, it's kind of like it's an odd opinion, to be honest with you. Like, why do you prioritize or hierarchize one set of empirically understood datum over and above another set, both of which can be susceptible to distortion?
Yeah, so this is a very good point that you raised. It's basically selective epistemic assertions that you selectively decide that will be valuable and this will be unquestionable, but this thing I'm going to throw out. But why are they really throwing it out? Because they know we use it as an argument. What they don't realize is that they are throwing out the baby with the bath water in terms of their own epistemology, because then they'll have to say, like you said, language, even science, even history, all these things they'll have to deny. So they don't understand. I think sometimes they think it's a sword that cuts us, but they don't realize it's a double-edged sword which harms them as well.
And also in terms of the Quran and Hadith, it's not as if there's not a written component. Like, first of all, the Quran, according to Al-Jazari, there has to be a triangulated set of criterion. One of them is muwafaqat al-rasm al-Uthmani. That has to be in accordance with the Uthmanic text. And the Uthmanic text is something which, as we know, is written, but it has been written since the time of Uthman. So there is a tradition of writing in this. It's not like, and when the muhaddithin, they talk about dabt, which is one of the 5 conditions of a sahih hadith. Dabt means accuracy, and what the rawi has to have dabt either in written and or memorized speech. So it's not as if the written aspect is not respected in the Islamic tradition. So with all these things and more, I don't think really there's a case to be made. I think that they're very jealous of what we have, if we're being honest, because nothing has ever been preserved in a medieval time or the time of antiquity the way the Islamic tradition has been preserved. Simple as that.
And subhanAllah, and you know about this, I was thinking something, yeah?
It says low Barry.
Oh, right. I was thinking something. You know, the other day, we were with those brothers who were super interested in those areas of Islamic Aqidah and areas of Islamic epistemology, an area of Islamic, the sort of deviant sects and, all those things. They had, do you remember the guy put out the book and he's reading and he's saying that? So you have to have an interest in those things. I think someone's ringing me for the food. So you have to have an interest in those things. So subhanAllah, the life of the Prophet ﷺ was such that he led large groups of people, hundreds of thousands of people, to have the motivation to have these things which are quite pedantic. You have to, find out the source of this particular verse, or how do we know that it's, the isnad of it, and so on and so on. So all of that incentive, that culture needed to exist. Hundreds of thousands of human beings had to be interested, like those brothers were, in order to preserve it, for the Quran to be preserved. You couldn't just, even if you had, say, 1 billion, right? You'd have to hire people, but you still wouldn't be able to get them interested in the topic.
You're absolutely right.
So subhanAllah, that culture itself is a miracle. Why is it that, I mean, there's this famous statement about Salahuddin Ayyubi that, if someone narrated to him a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he wouldn't listen. He'd sit down and he'd tell other people to sit down while it's being conveyed. So that collective culture, that's a miracle. That is a real miracle. How did that culture come around? If 50 years from now, we were to look back at all of the information about Obama, how much would we know? Even though we live in a tech, let's get all his videos, Obama's videos. Let's get all of Obama's speeches. Let's get all of his everything written about him. Even though Obama existed in the 21st century, we know more about a man that existed in the 7th century than we do about Obama 50 years from now. Everything about him is recorded. And where's the motivation? I think that's the food. Hello? Yeah, 3rd floor, 321. Yeah, are you on the 3rd floor? Hello? Okay.
Moreover, on the other point,
turn around.
On the other point.
Hello, turn around. Can you see me?
On the other point that you made,
just here.
About the Sahaba, you have to remember what the Quran states about this, right? So the asl is that the Sahaba, Allah has done taraddi on them, which means that He's already pleased with them.
Thank you very much, brother. You have a very safe evening.
Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُم بِإِحْسَانٍ رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وأعد لهم جنات تجري تحتهم الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا ذلك الفوز العظيم. And then in the next verse, وممن حولكم من المنافقين وممن حولكم من المدينة المنافقون. So the asl is that the Sahaba, that Allah has done taraddi on them, which means He's pleased with them, and the munafiqun are the groups of people which are extracted from that major group. And so how do we know who the munafiqun are? We know because obviously Allah, He knows best, because He said, لا تعلمهم الله يعلمهم. Like, you don't know who they are. Allah knows who they are. But then He revealed who they were to Hudayfa bin Yaman. And there was a list of them. And we know, like Abdullah bin Salul and others that were munafiqun. Now, if we know, one thing we can dispel is the Shiite claim that the Sahabiyat and the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen were munafiqun. We can dispel this because if it was the case that they were not actually true believers and it was written in a paper, then how could the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ be valid to them? How could it be that Allah would allow him to be with a munafiqah?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Now they could argue, well, actually look at Lut and Nuh. كانتا تحت عبدين من عبادنا فخانتاهما. Now his wives were done khiyana of him, like they went against him. But it's different because in this case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed the continuation of the marriage. It didn't cease at any point. And moreover, Allah had told the Sahaba who was the munafiq and who wasn't the munafiq. And they continued being leaders in the community, by the way, after the Prophet ﷺ's death. So all of this and more, it indicates to us that the asl is that the Sahaba have been given the gold stamp of approval from Allah Himself.
Yeah.
And even in Shia reports, you'll find, like, subhanallah, الَّذِينَ يُبَيَّعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ, the ones who gave you bay'ah under the tree. And we know who was under that tree, And so you look at the evidences, you realize that that's the Quranic evidence, which is the strongest. And then you have the living evidence, like that they fought with him, like how they lived with him. That's sincerity. Like when you were willing to put your life on the line for something. That is sincerity. Well, you wouldn't do that with a cause you don't believe in.
You pay people money, they'll run away. Standing army will run away.
Exactly, yeah.
And I was thinking about something. The verse in the Quran about if you spend a mountain of gold, you couldn't have brought their hearts together. The Sahaba. Bro, it's phenomenal. These warring tribes, these people who were at each other's necks for years and years and years. And revelation comes, and they're willing to allow a stranger to come and live in their house, and he's come from a different city, and they'll take care of him. They'll go hungry themselves, but they'll feed their thing. They'll choose a stranger who's a believer, who's a black man from Africa, from Abyssinia, over their own tribe. That guy, Russ Rogers, I was telling you about, who wrote that book, Generalship of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He wrote that Arabia was a very tribal society, and tribe was like basically everything. But the Prophet ﷺ created a super tribe called the Ummah. Isn't that deep?
Yeah.
A tribe which is way beyond, nationality, race, their ideologies and all these types of things. So I hope that answers the question. Nice, dude.
Yeah, it did. Thank you. Allah bless you guys.
God bless you, man. Sorry, we just came back from the protest. Super hungry. And
actually ate.
Yeah, so did I, but to be honest, it was a very small burger. Well, it's quite tiny, wasn't it?
Right. It was not. I ate a burger and I ate a lot actually, but I'm eating again.
Let's bring on our brother Sakaria Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum, akhi.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you doing? You look like you're walking down a corridor. It looks like I say down this corridor.
I'm in a masjid. I live in Norway.
Norway, mashallah.
Yeah. Every Saturday we have a little, what's it called? We meet together, we eat some food, we talk about the deen. We do it every Saturday, and today is a Saturday.
None.
Yeah, not like that.
So
I don't mind them.
my question.
Yeah, sorry, bro. What's up, man?
Yeah. So my question
How you doing?
is about. I'm good. Just ate. My stomach is full. But my question is about free will and how
What?
are Muslims
Free will.
not?
No.
How are Muslims not deterministic?
We're compatibilists. So believe that Allah, He has qadr, He knows the future, He put it into action, He's always in control of it, and that He's written the future. But that at the same time, human beings have been given free will. How that those two things come together, no one knows how that works. Just like no one knows how Allah hears or how Allah sees. Or this is a mechanistic question, and no one can answer it. How? But this is what we believe. We're not determinists because we believe in human free will. So we believe in human free will and determinism, which means compatibilism, theological compatibilism. So we are compatibilists. That's what we believe in, and it's really as simple as that. Now, I've written a piece which is on the Sapiens website on this.
Very good.
You can read that because it covers most of the ground here.
You did that part of your Oxford degree, right?
Yeah.
What marked it? If you don't mind, like
I think that got distinction, bro.
so
Yeah.
that was marked by like academics and who.
Yeah, Oxford academics.
So it's not like
Yeah.
these things are just like airy fairy or whatever. We're trying to give answers which are satisfactory.
Yeah.
You can say it's peer reviewed, the paper.
Yeah, obviously from the guys at Oxford. So read it. Now, I think that's the best thing.
I just read the beginning, and
We know that.
I agreed with you when you said Sam Harris' opinion about when it is deterministic, but he still criticizes morality. It doesn't make sense. It's like a contradiction. So I agree with you when you wrote that. But
Yeah.
I don't understand, as you said, the mechanistic.
Yeah, no one knows
side
that.
of
You'll never find that out. That's impossible. Just like saying, if I say to you, because the qadar of Allah, we're talking about now Allah's attributes. If I say Allah, how does Allah hear? If I ask you that question, how would you answer it?
Ghaib.
Yeah, we don't know that, do we? It's the same way, Allah, how does He do taqdeer? We don't know how He does that. How does He do taqdeer and at the same time give us free will? We don't know. But us not knowing how Allah does things, which He's capable of doing, is not an evidence against the fact that Allah can do it. For us, the main thing is, and if you keep reading, you'll see this. The main thing is, something is only impossible if it goes against Allah's attributes. So if Allah is all hearing and I say, oh, Allah is not all hearing, that's impossible now. Now I'm talking about something which is impossible.
Try this.
Yeah, don't mind.
Really hot.
Yeah, don't put it there. So it doesn't fall into the category of attributable impossibility. Well, it's gonna flick on me, man.
But my question is more about how we humans get responsible for our actions. How can we be kept?
No, I told you we have free will. We have free will, so that answers that question. Now the question is, how do you establish free will? Can we establish that human beings have free will? There are some. I think the best way to establish it is something called the principle of different persons. You'll see this when in the writing if you keep reading. Yeah. So, for example, Chrysippus, who's a Stoic, yeah, he gave an example of someone. If you go to the top of a hill and you have a ball and you have a cone, and you push the ball and you push the cone, what's going to happen to the ball?
Roll down.
It's going to roll. What's going to happen to the cone?
Stay there. Move a little bit.
It'll stay there, right? So both the ball and the cone are being, or the same external stimuli is being exerted on both the objects, but they are acting in a different way, yeah? And why are they acting in a different way? Because of their nature. So in the case of the ball, it's because of its rotundity that it's rolling. In the case of the cone, it's because of its flatness that it's staying there, right? Likewise, two human beings, in exactly the same circumstances, will act in completely different ways because their nature is different.
That's amazing.
And likewise, this is something that, I mentioned the Stoics.
So who came up with this?
It's a guy called Chrysippus, a Stoic.
So this is pre-Socratic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, not pre. This is like 3rd century or something. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, when the prophet now, I thought this was I thought this is amazing because we have different natures. We might be tempted with the same things, but react in different ways. The prophet actually indicated to this in the hadith. He says that the example of that which have been given, i.e. the Quran, is like a rain that comes from the sky.
Allahu Akbar.
And it hits different parts of the earth.
Allahu Akbar.
So, for example, it hits some part of the earth and it will do nothing to it. So, in other words, it's barren land. Or hit other parts of the earth and it will be useful to itself and to others. And likewise, revelation. Some revelation will hit some people and it will do nothing to them. And some revelation will hit other people and it will benefit them and others. So we go back to the principle of different persons. It is the case that one stimuli can have two different effects on two different people. Hence, the principle of different persons. Hence, we can actually establish that free will exists. But likewise, we can establish that determinism exists. And this is why it's not an issue which is Islamic specific.
No, but playing devil's advocate, or say Darwin's advocate, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't someone say that those natures were determined? Therefore, you're just pushing the problem back.
Yeah, but the thing is, you could make that point, but they're determined to be free. And once again, you push the problem forward again.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You know, because the nature, we're saying that the nature, we go to a mechanistic issue. How could it be determined to be free? That's now, if I say it's been determined to be free, like the Sha'ir, the poet said, وَمِنْ عَجَائِبِ الجَّبَّارِ أَنْ يَجْبُرُ الْعِبَادِ بِالِاخْتِيَارِ, that from the wonders of the compeller is that he compels the slaves into free will. The question is, how can you compel someone into free will? That's a mechanistic issue, which we've already explained. We cannot explain. And that's something we don't. It's like saying, how can Allah hear? How can Allah see?
Yeah.
What we can explain, we can establish beyond reasonable doubt the principle of different persons, and we can establish beyond reasonable doubt that assuming an antecedent causal chain of uninterrupted events, that things will be as they would be. And if we substitute that uninterrupted causal chain or antecedent chain with Allah or the first mover, then you have the same deterministic issue. So you can establish both kind of free will and determinism, but you can't explain how they both interpenetrate, if you like. You can't explain how they symbiotic.
But there's also a presupposition here. And the presupposition is, in order for us to believe in something, we have to be able to rationally put it into our brain and it makes sense. But that's not necessarily true. Because most of the things that we believe, if we were to keep questioning, how do you know, how do you know, how do you know, how do you know, Aristotle said you'd have an infinite regresses of how do you know, till the point that you can't have any knowledge. So you have to have some basic beliefs which are not challengeable, which are axiomatic. Those are things you can never justify. Likewise, why have this assumption, I can't believe in free will until I can rationalize it? Why even have that? Because that's assuming you have to rationalize everything, right? And also, there's a really good video. You were debating some atheist, and he was coming up with this argument. You said, "Well, you got the same problem.
Yeah.
So let's stop pretending like this is our problem. This is your problem. It's our problem. In fact, whichever
System.
clubhouse
you
enter, determinism, compatibilism, total free will, you will have issues, and you will not be able to actually justify that. Every single one of these positions can be attacked. Does that mean that there's going to be a special attack on Islam and not on others? No, it doesn't make any sense. So I mean, that's the way I think the paper that you wrote, which is actually very like a spiritual journey type of thing.
Yeah, because someone I saw him one time. I said to him, I left Islam. Why? He goes, the Qadr issue.
Yeah.
I said, is it? I said, yeah. All right.
There's a drink.
Yeah, but that's going to make it worse.
Shall I give you water?
No, that's fine. He said, the Qadr issue. I said, why? He said, because with the Qadr issue, all the issues that we just talked about, yeah? So I said to him, as an atheist now, what do you subscribe to?
Good question.
Do you subscribe to the hard determinism, compatibilism, or libertarian and free will? Because like you said, all three of these can be criticized. It doesn't explain all the data in terms of mechanism. None of them explain all the data. So from that perspective, this is not an Islamic specific issue.
Yeah.
Whatever religion you decide to be, even if you have no religion, it's just a difficult thing to answer. Instead of God determining everything, the atheists have an uninterrupted causal chain. Simple as that.
It's like this, yeah.
So it's a mechanistic issue which human mind is not able to fully grasp, and otherwise it wouldn't be schools of thought.
Another way of thinking about it is, imagine an atheist said to you, "Can you prove that you exist from first principles?" You say no, therefore Islam's false. We'll turn around and say, well, firstly, that doesn't make any sense, and two, if that was a valid argument, your worldview would fall apart as well.
Right.
Because this idea to prove our existence from first principles it presupposes loads of things, and you can get into meditations, Descartes' ideas, and all these types of things. The fact is, it's not an argument. So usually we see this selective application of criticism when it comes to theistic ideas, but they don't realize that actually they've got the same exact problem. And it's not actually a problem. If you really think about it, it's understanding that there are limitations to what we can conceive. And currently, some people are coming up with this idiotic idea that quantum mechanics can sort out the free will issue. Total nonsense. Absolute nonsense, right? However, look at what quantum mechanics is coming up with. It's coming up with things which are very counterintuitive. Don't make much sense, at least the interpretations of them, right? So, that's what we need to keep in mind, because sometimes we accept the selective paradigm and we don't realize that by accepting the selective paradigm that they are imposing, we are actually putting ourselves in a very disabled position, in a very handicapped position, and we need to step back and not accept that paradigm.
There are some things in Islam you can say I don't know to. And when it relates to Allah's attributes, that's the one.
I want to say something, right?
Be like,
In Speaker's Corner, this happened the other time. I was, the guy's asking certain questions, and those certain questions, there is no answer that we know there's a wisdom behind every legislation of Allah, but if we do not know, like for example, why is alcohol haram, we can give a wisdom answer.
Yeah.
But when it comes to say something else, you can try and come up with a wisdom, but you can also say I don't know, because we don't know for certain if that was the wisdom. Now in the park, and I wanted your thoughts on this. I said to those two young men, those two atheists that I was talking to, especially one of them, that actually I don't know, we don't know the answer to this, but we know why Islam is true.
Yeah.
Some of the Muslims in the comment sections were upset because they wanted an answer, because they've heard answers all their life. Why is this thing in Islam? Because X, Y, Z. Thing is, those answers aren't, unless they're legislated, unless they're specified in the Quran and Sunnah, those answers are mere interpretations. You can't say for certain that is the wisdom. And sometimes it's okay to say I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean Islam is false. It simply means you're just being honest and saying there's certain things we just don't know. But I want you to ask you this: why is it people don't like hearing that answer? Muslims are like, no, we have to have an answer for everything, even non-Muslims.
That's it's an aqidah issue, because when we talk about Allah's attributes, his functional attributes, or his necessary attributes, or his intrinsic attributes, or his will, we are talking about something which we say we affirm the attribute, but how it works, we don't know. That's part of our religion, actually. All schools of thought agree with that.
But even then,
everyone agrees with that. Ash'ari, Mu'tazili, Maturidi, we say, what do you call it? Athari, Salafi, everyone agrees. Be like Kaif. We don't know how it works. We don't know how Allah's attributes work. In conjunction with our free will, how does it work? We don't know. That's it. And we have to be okay with that.
Is that okay, brother Zakaria? Zakaria.
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 It's pronounced like Zakaria, but my parents wrote it wrong. But you answered my question, and thank you for highlighting that mechanism is the problem, and no one can answer it today.
Yes, but keep reading, because it goes into detail, though, that thing.
I will.
Jazakallah khair, brother.
Thank you, Akhi.
All righty. Let's look at who is next. Shah Jahan, do you have your camera on? There's that handsome brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Where you calling from, brother?
I've got a question about, so it's not really a doubt that I have myself, but it's a question which I get from non-Muslims. Now, it's to do with pronouns and how Allah is referred to as he quite a lot. Now, so I guess it's twofold. It's not just about why is it that there's a use of he opposed to, for example, she. But the second thing which I find interesting, which someone recently asked me, was that if you can explain, obviously there's like a linguistic explanation as to why he's used rather than she. I think I understand that bit, but how do you, I guess this is more like a modern issue, how do we answer when someone says that by using the word he, and I guess keeping the word he. Now,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be changing things like anything in the Quran or anything like that, but it's just about the use of he in, like, for example, day-to-day language. Would that not have a adverse impact on, I guess, the treatment or the way that we have an outlook on our female counterparts? So if we're constantly using the word he when we refer to the divine, they sort of say that then that could possibly lead to issues to do with how we view females,
Yeah.
comparatively speaking.
So I'll let Hijab do the linguistic side of things of in the Arabic language when it comes to when you use male, masculine, and feminine, and whatnot. But I do want to highlight some sociological aspects of this. Nobody, absolutely nobody, before the 21st century, objected to these, the way that Allah is described. So this is a made-up problem. It is if you like, an issue being used against Islam purely out of this a very aggressive type of gender warfare that's being currently in the culture wars, in the ideological wars in the public domain. So in terms of our ideology, in terms of our aqidah, in terms of our ethics, in terms of our jurisprudence, in terms of our understanding sociologically, the structures of Muslim societies, none of these things ever had an iota of difference in terms of how it affected Muslim societies functioning. So this is, if you like, firstly, a storm in a teacup, right? The way that this thing is being raised. However, linguistically, I want you to address that point, because I think it's very important to.
Well, first of all,
the Arabic language.
There's no it in Arabic language. There's no it. There's it in English. The closest thing is in Arabic. Allah actually refers to himself as shay. قُلْ أَيُّ شَيْءٍ أَكْبَرُ شَهَادَةً قُلِ اللَّهُ. Shay means thing, by the way. So it's allowed to call Allah thing. It's Allah allowed to call Allah entity or thing, because Allah, He calls Himself that. قُلْ أَيُّ شَيْءٍ أَكْبَرُ شَهَادَةً. So this already indicates the gender neutrality of Allah. But since the Arabic language works in a way, because you couldn't call a woman a thing, right? You couldn't call a girl a thing. That's the first thing. The second thing is that in the Arabic language is male and female. So it's either huwa and then always hiya, right? Now, if there's a reason, because the default third person a pronoun classification for an Arabic word is huwa. You got huwa, huma, hum, hiya, huma, hunna, anta, antuma, antum, anti, antuma, antuna, and nahnu. These are the 12 to 14 pronouns in Arabic language. Now, as I said, if the default is huwa for a third person, anything that is third person, then in that case, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about himself, then he is speaking about himself in the way which is default to Arabic language, which is not gender specific necessarily. Yeah. So if he calls himself here, then this would indicate femininity, because in this context, if you want to move it from a default to feminine, there has to be a reason, and there are many reasons that Arabic language to do that. For example, the غير عاقل, or the inanimate things which are plural is female. So there are rules there which have to be abided by. It doesn't mean that this indicates gendered nature, because we know from Allah in the Quran, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There's nothing like him at all, and he is all hearing and wise, all seeing. And وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. There's nothing comparable unto him. So it's undoubtedly that Allah is now, as it relates to what you were talking about, it's my 2 cents with the whole gender thing. The way I see third wave feministic or queer discourse, or I see it as a religion. I see it as a mythology of some sort, or Western mythology. I think that in 100 years' time, anthropologists would look back at us in the West and say, look, these guys, their mythology was...
These guys.
Yeah, these human beings, that in Western culture they believed in a mythology where they could invent their own scientific classifications, even though those scientific classifications were against the reality. Because what is a myth is something which is not in conformance usually to the real world. So the gender discussion that they're having now is mythological. Actually mythological. It's a fiction. It's a Western fiction. And 100 years from now, maybe, Western anthropologists will look back and say, look at these people that lived, and they genuinely believe that they were Korean and they were a white Caucasian man. It's because they have taken away religion from public discourse. It's almost as if they had to invent a new religion which is filled with mythologies in order to compensate for it.
Yeah.
And why do we need to use their religion in order to understand our own paradigm? You see what I'm trying to say? If they've got their own fiction and they've got their own mythologies, then we have to explain to them what we don't mean. So if I'm speaking to someone from that background, which we can't say is the majority, bro, it's not. They're not the majority in the West even, but there's a considerable chunk of people in the West
They're
that
loud.
subscribe to this ideology now or this religion, this mythology. That we need to explain to them that okay, this is not what we mean. This is what we mean. We do mean gender neutrality when it comes to Allah. We do mean that. Well, and that's it really. But it doesn't mean that we're going to start changing our language or they'll come back and say, well, why don't you just say it or she or whatever to Allah? We say no, because we're not going to change the way we do things and have to continually doing things
Because of your tantrums.
Because of your religious viewpoints. Because of your mythologies. Your mythology should not affect the way we express our faith. And that's as simple as that.
No, I wouldn't force a say Hindu to get circumcised. I wouldn't force a Hindu to say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam after the Prophet Sallam. So why are they forcing their ideology upon us? Like we have to use those words. We have to do this. We have to do that. Brother Shah Jahan, it was lovely having you. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. We have our lovely friend, Canadian Catholic. Did you email me some time back by any chance?
Yeah, I have, Sabur. I have emailed
Oh, yeah, I
you.
can get back to you.
Yeah, you've never gotten back to me. Hi, Mohammed. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm a big fan of Mohammed Hijab in a certain sense.
Everyone is.
Well, let's start with because he's tall. You know, that's the stature. He's very tall. I see 6'7" or 6'6", right? Yeah, I had a couple of questions for I guess you guys, mainly for Mohammed because I want to embarrass him. No, well, I'm joking. Yeah, so Mohammed, so there's a couple of questions actually. Yeah, so first let's start with religious freedom. And what is the Islamic view? Now, I'm not trying to impose anything. I'm just genuinely wondering what your view is. What do you believe about religious freedom for non-Islamic religions?
In what context?
Oh, freedom to worship, freedom to practice.
We believe it fully. We believe in Islam, religious freedom. No one should be compelled to be a Muslim, and everyone that is not Muslim should maybe making their own decision whether they want to be Muslim or not.
So, do you believe that Islamic countries can, for example, allow building of churches for Christians?
Pardon?
Do you? Is my microphone not clear enough?
No, I didn't hear you.
Okay, that's fine. So, do you believe that it's okay for Islamic countries to allow building of churches for Christians?
Most fuqaha or jurists say that the building of new churches is not allowed.
Sorry,
But
I couldn't hear what's not allowed.
they say new churches being built is different to churches that are already there being used. You know,
Right.
so most of jurists say the building of new churches is different. It's a different discussion point to churches that are already there in establishment.
Right.
And in the case of the latter, they allow them to continue existing. In the case of the former, if you like, the planning permission probably wouldn't even be given.
I see. All right. So, is that a rule that applies to non-Muslim countries as well, or no?
What do you mean? No.
No. Okay. So you don't believe that English people should not be allowed to build their own churches or something?
No, of course not. This relates to the land occupied by Islam.
Sorry.
This relates to the land occupied by Islam,
Okay. Right.
not the
Yeah.
land that's occupied by non-Muslims.
Right.
Talking
Yeah.
about
So I
Islamic land.
also had a question about images. So from what I understand, Muslims do not use images in their worship of any kind. But
Except Shias do it. But that's really,
sorry?
and we don't represent Shias, but just to give you
Right.
Shias. But according to them, that's why you'll see pictures of Ali.
Yeah.
and stuff.
So my question
Very
is,
Catholic looking.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I mean, I don't mean that because you're Catholic. I mean,
No, that's fine.
they generally have a lot of Catholicism type of influence.
Right. So, yeah, I had another question. So, I've heard that earlier scholars actually believed that no living creature could be displayed or used an image of, not just in a religious context, but in general. Is that something you hold to?
Say that again. Sorry.
Sorry. So, my view, my
He's had too much chili.
yeah, he's just not listening. Okay. I'm joking. I'm joking. So, I've heard that I've heard it said that it's not just so again I've interviewed Dr. Shabir Ali. He's a great friend of he's a great guy. I mean, I happen to go to the same university as him, and I've hosted him on my podcast. But so the answer that he gave and that I've heard others is that earlier Muslim scholars seem to have believed that you cannot make images of any living creature.
Yeah, even now.
Now, is that something that you hold to?
The images of the face of that creature, the faces,
So you don't believe it's okay to paint portraits?
anything but faces.
Except when it comes to medical books.
children.
So medical books. So when you're trying to
Like for
describe
example,
anatomy,
yeah,
you can draw the face.
if there's a reason, or like for example, like that, or for children, like for example, children that have toys that they benefit from because for education.
So you believe that about statues as well?
No, statues a child doesn't require a statue.
So do you believe that statues cannot be made of famous people?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not the statue of the face.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, and a similar question about music.
By the way, just one wisdom of that. I'm not saying this is the reason, but one wisdom is because I mean, there's a lot of injunctions in Islam that prohibit it because it could be a pathway to polytheism.
Right.
Because when you start making statues, then veneration comes into it, and we believe that's where Christians went wrong, in the sense that they depicted their prophets, and after that, this made them kind of worship them. In the case of Jesus and his mother, and we consider what Catholics do with Mary as worship. By the way,
Yeah.
The veneration.
Not just you, by the way. Some Protestants do that as well, huh?
Yeah, for sure. But Catholics in particular, calling her the Mother of God,
Right.
and the kinds of things that Catholics believe about Mary, we believe that to be full-on worship. So it's a kind of polytheism for us. So in order to stop that kind of thing, any type of worship, that's one point. The other reason was because it's almost as if you're competing with God on his creation, and so it's something which is not allowed from those perspectives. And we're seeing this with AI now. People think that they can start arrogating to themselves in this self-congratulating type of attitude.
So like one question on that is, aren't you like? I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but aren't you violating that rule by being on camera, for example, or by taking pictures, or no?
So that's a good question, but there's some scholarly opinions that actually do believe that, which are very minority. What I think is that because the Prophet, and this is the fatwa that I follow on the issue, or the opinion, that is the Prophet allowed mirrors. Mirrors.
Right.
So because the Prophet allowed mirrors, cameras are more close to mirrors than they are to drawings, because they reflect my image.
Yeah.
So this is what in Islamic jurisprudence is called qiyas. So what is the analogical causative reasoning going to be related back to? Is it going to be related back to the drawing prohibition of faces, or is it going to be related back to the mirror allowance? And so I follow the opinion that says it will be related back to the mirror allowance as the opinion of many.
So yeah. So let me ask 2 more questions, because I'm gonna going soon because so many people want to come in. I don't want to take all the time from.
Of course.
Yeah. So one more has to do about music. So from what I understand, part of our liturgy, Catholic liturgy especially, but many others, music is an integral part. Not just singing.
But before you continue, what are those books behind you?
Oh, that's Encyclopedia Britannica. That's Encyclopedia Britannica. That's World Book. That's Collier. I got a bunch of books, so I got like 3 sets of Britannica. I got philosophy books, stuff like that. I do. I mean, I guess
I thought it's something related to the Bible.
No. You guys. People tell me that I look like a Muslim scholar because you guys have some books that have the same cover.
Yeah.
People tell me that all the time. Yeah. So one question was. So one question was about music because for us Catholics, music is a big part of our liturgy. And from what I understand, most Muslims do not use music in their worship at all. Not classical music.
Sufis do. I mean, but that's certainly not the opinion of some Sufis. I should
No,
say.
but would they use in ibadah? Would they use in
some-
worship?
Worship. Yeah, they use it for that. Yeah, I mean, but we wouldn't consider that to be a normative opinion. That would be something which is not allowed, but they still do it.
So you don't believe it's allowed to play a hymn, for example, in a mosque?
Right. So what? A Christian hymn?
No. Okay, fine. Muslim hymn, of course. Yeah.
No,
Muslim.
we have our own kind of recitations and stuff, as I'm sure.
No, but do you
Right.
allow music to be played?
All right. So basically, there's a hadith in Bukhari,
Right.
which states that لا يكونن أقوام ليستحل الحر والحرير والخمر والمعازف. This is the only hadith really, which I mean the major hadith that is used to prohibit music, which says that people will make haram, Allah made halal, and the Prophet mentioned 4 things, and one of them was music. Yeah. Now the vast majority of Islamic scholarship, for that reason, says that music is prohibited. There are some exceptions to that, including Al-Ghazali, actually, quite a big scholar, who said it was halal.
I know. I study Al-Ghazali actually in university.
Yeah, he allowed it. Ibn Hazm allowed it. A few people allowed it, but apart from that, the vast majority of scholars just didn't allow it. So, and with worship, the way it works in Islam is that the only thing which is allowed in worship is that which was explicitly relayed to us by the Prophet, because of the prophetic saying of the Prophet, which is "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad." Whoever innovates into our religion what is not from it, then it's rejected. So any form of worship which is not explicitly mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad or endorsed or allowed, that's not allowed. You know, so introducing music and instruments and stuff like that.
Not even devotional music.
None of the above, because it's not something that the Prophet did or allowed. The Sunnah, or the things that we are allowed to do, are basically 4. You can say 3 things that the Prophet said, which is the strongest form.
Right.
Okay, what he said. The second strongest is his action. Okay.
Right.
And the third strongest is akrar, or what he allowed. So if it doesn't fit into these 3 categories, if it's worship, then it's not allowable.
Okay, and just to clarify more, you do accept that music can be, for example, a Muslim can compose classical music or something like that, right?
The vast majority of, as I've mentioned, the vast majority of scholars would not allow it.
No, I mean non-worship. No, I mean non-worship services. I mean general secular.
Yeah, even then, the vast majority of Muslim scholars don't allow it.
But do you accept that?
I think that's the stronger, because when I looked into it myself, I mean, those who say, like Ibn Hazm and others, who say that it's allowed because the hadith is mu'allaq, which is one form of weakness. Ibn Hajar, who is a major scholar, and his kitab is called Fath al-Bari. He mentions that it's not mu'allaq, it's not weak, because he mentions you have Hamad ibn Shakir and Zarkashi, who are 2 rawis that actually strengthen the chain of narration. And so, in fact, Al-Iraqi, who is one of the major hadith scholars, he mentions in his poem of hadith, don't follow Ibn Hazm in music. He don't follow Ibn Hazm in his opinion on music. So it's seen opinion of it being allowable, although it is there. We can't lie. Some scholars allow it in Islam, like Ibn Hazm, like Al-Ghazali. Some Malikis allow it. You know, there are a considerable number of heavyweight scholars that have allowed it. because they say that hadith is weak. However, from my own reading, I think that those scholars are wrong because of the evidence against them.
Right. Okay, so I'll move on to my final question. I mean, I don't mean to sound rude on this one. I don't want to take
I mean,
spotlight
you're not
on
rude at all.
Sabur Ahmad. And again, I'm moving on. So in the past, so first of all, about me a little bit. I mean, we do this podcast on YouTube. I've had the privilege to interview and have podcasts with some of the world's leading minds on this. Probably not as many Muslims, but we've had Dr. Shabir Ali. I'm sure that Muhammad is familiar with him. And I'm proud to be from the same university as Dr. Shabir,
Nice.
University of Toronto, greatest. And so I have reached out to both of you. To Sabur, I never got a response back, but from either of you, would it be possible to get either one of you or both of you on a podcast for a short, brief interview about Islam to represent the Islamic perspective?
I don't know. We'll have to look at it, and
Sure.
because already it's we have to kind of look at our schedules. It's difficult to do
Right.
live, all this kind of things. But
Look, I'll give you an answer, which because I get this a lot, and I think
Yeah.
I'll answer on behalf of you, but also Hashim, Mansoor, other brothers as well. Generally, we get lots and lots and requests for these types of things, and it literally ends up being a situation where if you start accepting it, then your whole week will be flooded with these types of things. So like I hardly ever accept invites now. I know you don't because people contact me because you didn't respond. So I'm not sure if we can commit to it
Sure.
yet.
this is the best way. I'll be honest with you.
Sure.
Like, if you're coming over, like, you've got questions, but what I want to talk to you about, I've answered your question. What I think would be nice is speaking about foundational matters about the religion,
Of course.
about our respective religions, because I think that's where we should start as a Muslim, as a Christian, where we should start. But by all means, if support allows you to take the snippets and put it on your channel, then he allows it. If not, then
Yeah, I allow everybody to do that.
all right, fine.
That's not a
Then that's your best bet.
yeah.
I see. All right, guys. Thanks so much for responding to me.
Can I ask
sure.
you, like, okay, so you're aware of Islam, you're aware of what we
Yeah.
believe, and this type of thing. So my question to you is, like, why would you choose Christianity over Islam? What would be your reasons?
I won't be offensive. I'm just going to give my reasons, right? I mean,
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah,
one
of
is I don't think that to be honest, I don't think that Islam has the as strong foundation, I think, in inflexibility as Catholicism does. What I see is a lot of change in Islam that I don't personally agree with. It has nothing to do with Muhammad personally, because I have no opinion on historical figures, either negative or positive, positive sometimes. But I don't, for example, see the sort of authority that I see with Catholicism, and that would be my biggest gripe. I see, for example, early Muslims believing in veneration of holy sites, whereas modern Muslims don't. And my biggest concern is, well, if you're just allowed to change your opinion on such foundational matters, it's really hard. Secondly, I don't think that the historical case for Islam works. Specifically, certain things that are taught as dogma or have been taught, I just don't agree with. I believe the Quran teaches that all of the disciples of Jesus taught Tawheed, and they didn't teach that Christ was either the Son of God or God, which I think is pretty hard to substantiate in my case. That would be the second one. So I guess
just like let's sort of look at each thing.
What the first point where you were
well,
making?
more importantly, though, I don't want to take anyone's time anymore. I mean, there's so many people. You all answered my question, so
No, but
No,
just on the first issue, because I
Yeah.
didn't
Sure.
quite understand it.
Sure.
You're saying that the historical sites. Can you just expound on that? a
No,
little
that was his second point.
No, that was my first point.
Was it your point? Okay, sorry.
My first point was what I call some kind of no centralized authority in Islam, I guess. No teaching with authority. The second point was,
You mean like a pope?
well, not only the Pope, because Pope is there are other religions that don't believe in popes, for example, but they accept some kind of authority.
My question to you, Canadian Catholic, the Canadian Catholic. Your name
My name is Joshua. You can call me
Joshua, right?
Joshua.
Yeah. So that is a preference which makes no difference in terms of the truth value of a particular worldview. So you may like something which has a structure of a papa, of a pope, and you may not like something which does not have a centralized authority currently, like Islam, but that does not impact the truth value. So let's get down to, for example, something that obviously you must have seen Hijab doing his debates and Hashim and Mansour and stuff, which is getting down to the core theology here. Like Jesus, according to the Islamic paradigm, because he ate, because he drank, because he bowed down and worshipped God, there's so many evidences for why we would say he is a human. He is not divine in any way. And you know, from your perspective, it's I'm sure you're aware of all these arguments.
I am. So what I think, again, I don't want to be insulting at all, because I mean, I have fair.
No, you're not. I mean, you're Canadian. It's very hard for Canadians to be insulting.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, I have a fair bit of respect for Muhammad. And again, when I say these things, Muslims might think, "Oh, he's insulting," but I'm not. I'm asked. I didn't even.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that Muhammad and yourself may do wonderful stuff engaging with popular Christian arguments, and I'm fine with that, and I have no problem with that. But the worldview that I would hold to is more Aristotelian, Thomistic, and I think that there is no interaction with that particular worldview from, for example, the criticism of the Trinity that would apply to Pastor Jim would not apply to somebody who holds to a Thomistic worldview like me, and the criticism of the Incarnation would not apply to somebody who holds to a Thomistic worldview, because I'm philosophically grounded. I'm a philosophy student. I guess I need to bring that up all the time, which means I'm a loser, basically. If you're a philosophy student, you're I'm joking. Yeah. So what I see is, again, I find the stuff that Muslims do entertaining. Well, not all Muslims, but
I'll ask you a question here, Joshua. Like, you're saying that obviously the arguments which you're aware of, they don't apply because you follow a what did you call it? Thomistic type of view.
Scholastic.
I mean, I'm not an expert when it comes to Christianity, and Hijab's done debates and others, but just a question that say something like the historical, creation of the biblical narratives, because there was more than one, and what we know of that
creation of the biblical narrative,
as in we have the Bible not as something today that we can trace back to the historical person of Jesus. It is something in which if we go back, we'll have narratives, and one narrative is obviously chosen by the church over the others. So the real question, that criticism would apply to your Thomistic type of worldview as much as it would Pastor Jim, right?
Sure. Yeah, sure. That's a different criticism. But you brought up the Trinity incarnation, first of all, and that's where I responded to. But yeah, so that's a
no, but the reason why, because the Trinity and the reincarnation come from the Bible. That's why
Sure. But I was talking about whether the incarnation and Trinity are coherent or incoherent. And I think that the Muslim case that they're incoherent does not address our worldview. But yeah, so the question about the Bible is
forget about talking to a debate about this.
Sure.
I'm just.
I mean, I'm not debating Muhammad, if that's the.
No. I'm just saying. I'm actually curious because you said Aristotelian Thomistic worldview.
Yeah.
That many Muslims held to, but not Thomistic. But
wait. Remind me where in Thomas Aquinas' works that he makes the case for the Trinity.
That would be Summa Theologiae Prima Pars, starting from question 27, including question 43.
Question 47.
No, it starts from question 27 and ends with question 43.
What are the salient points that he makes?
Yeah, so we hold to a Latin Trinitarianism, which is that the Trinity is generated from a procession in God, procession that does not proceed outside of God, that generates a subsistent procession, which, due to opposition of relation and spiration, generates the procession of the Word and the procession of the Spirit.
So is that would you say is commensurate with Augustinian understanding?
Augustinian view, yeah, I guess so. Though Augustine was not a scholastic, it's close to Augustinian view, yeah. Because I'm also an Augustinian myself, personally.
Yeah, okay. So then most of the criticisms that we have of the Trinity is it's the same. All right. Well, thank you so much for having.
No, thank you all so much, Mohammed. God bless you, and. Of the team, and I'm looking forward to your Jordan Peterson interview to take a look.
Yes.
at them. All right. God bless. Take care, guys, and
Yeah,
see you all.
take care.
All right.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
So what wanted you to put on the camera?
Oh, really? Is it mandatory? Do I have to?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Okay, no problem. Bismillah. Okay.
Okay. How you doing, bro?
I'm good. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, man.
Okay, so I just have like one question to ask. So
Yeah.
I was just wondering about this, and then I found that how would I would substantiate the belief, right? So like they say, like how you say the morality is subjective, right? So like an atheist would think that the morality is subjective.
Yeah.
Right, and then Muslims will believe that's objective. But then when they come to the question that, but you believing that Islam is objective is subjective in itself. So how can you substantiate that?
We do that by showing from the beginning how, like, we start from first principles. So we start from existence. We start from the fact that there needs to be a necessary existence, and all of that is an attempt to show objectively why God exists, and then objectively why God is one, and then objectively why there's a probabilistic case for the Prophet and the Quran being the truth, etc. So we are not arguing from subjectivity. We are arguing to establish a case from objectivity.
I see. So, but proving that the, there has to be a necessary being, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a necessary being, how because the argument, for example, for me at least, and I'm thinking that if there can't, it's inconceivable that there can be a chain of dependencies just going on forever. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, why is that not conceivable? So like, why not, like, if like an analogy would be, why there can be just a battery there
So that's
that
beautiful.
just keeps going? Yeah.
All right, let me ask you, right? If so, there's the proposition that there's a chain of dependencies. Yeah, you either agree or disagree with that proposition. Say you agree and say, yeah, it's inconceivable that there can be a chain of dependencies. Yeah.
Yes.
So you agree with that. So then we have to go and speak about how there's an independent thing that all dependent things depend upon, but it depends upon nothing. But if you say no, I disagree with it, which is what you're saying,
Yeah.
and you say, well, actually, I disagree, and there can be a situation where there can be a chain of dependencies of ad infinitum, right? What that would be?
Not an infinitum.
Okay.
Why
even
can't
better.
there be? Why can then it can be dependent, right? So what? Maybe
All right.
I'm thinking about it
Okay.
wrong. But imagine having like a battery, right? That everything depends on this battery, and when it runs out of charge, then the universe stops existing. Like that kind of thing. Why can't that battery? Like why can't this
So
thing be?
let's answer your question. Yeah. Say you have two things. Yeah. You've got either a chain of dependencies which is finite or infinite. Correct. There's no third option. Correct.
Okay.
Is there a third option?
Oh, no. I don't
All
think
right.
there's a third option.
So either there's. Let's be clear. When we say dependent, we're talking about something which relies upon something else for its existence. Yeah. So if you have a chain of dependencies, you have a chain of dependencies. Now these chain of dependencies are either finite or infinite. If it's finite, it can be either circular or linear. There's no third option. So in a circular, it's either A causes B causes C, and a C causes A. Yeah. But that would be contradictory because effects would be the causes of themselves, and causes will be the causes of themselves. Yeah. It's like a mother giving birth to herself. You'd have to exist and not exist at the same time, like the universe creating itself. This is like where they themselves are creators of themselves. So if it's circular, then it's impossible. Now let's say it's linear. So you have a chain of dependency which is finite and linear. So we said this already. You got finite and infinite, right? We said if it's finite, it can either be circular or linear. Circular, we've crossed it out. It's impossible because that would mean that something is causing itself or creating itself or whatever. If it's linear, then in that case, or depending upon itself. If it's linear, then A causes B, B causes C, right? Then A causes B and C. In which case you established a prime mover, and in that case you've established God. So this would be a shot in the foot for an atheist for them to argue that way. So the only way that they can argue is by saying, well, actually, it's infinite. Now, if they say it is infinite, and they say that it's conceivable that a chain of dependencies can depend upon itself ad infinitum, in this case, because now we've eliminated everything else, in this case, you're saying that the chain of dependencies is independent. Because if the chain of dependencies is dependent on itself, that is the definition of independence, when something depends on itself. But then we would say anything that is made out of component parts and or members is generated, that a chain of dependencies is made up of constituent parts and or members. Therefore, the chain of dependencies is generated. In which case, through composition, we show that it's impossible for there to be a chain of dependencies. So we argue ad absurdum. In which case, we go back to the original thesis, which is that there's something which all things depend upon, but it depends upon nothing.
Okay, so if my understanding is correct, then would that be? Am I arguing that if there is a chain, right? Then that chain it presupposes that the chain itself is already independent, right? So if that's the case, then it can't.
So remember, we said if there's a chain, either the chain is finite or infinite. We said that if it's finite, it can either be linear or circular. Circular is impossible. Linear would indicate the first prime mover, which would be a shot in the foot for the atheist. If it's infinite, and they say that it depends on itself, that would mean it's independent. But we would show ad absurdum that it can't be independent because it's made out of different parts. And those
okay, this part. Okay, I see now.
Then you go back to the original thesis. You get it?
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
Exhaustive analysis of all the things that could be in this chain indicates that actually it's impossible for there to be anything other than an independent thing, which all things depend upon, and it depends upon nothing, i.e., a samad.
I see. Okay. There was another question, if you don't mind. I had about a question about morality. So, give me a second. I have it written down. Give me 1 sec. I'm confused now. Did you answer this already? Islam being objective is subjective.
Yeah, I kind of did, because I told you that we're arguing this objectively. We're not arguing it subjectively. Our argument is that it's not subjective. They can't do with morality what we're doing with God right now. The existence of God. They can't show through first principles why there's a necessity for morality to be objective in an atheistic worldview. Therefore, because they're impotent of doing what we're doing, they can't have the same privileges that we have, of saying that morality is objective.
Okay, I see. And then I was listening.
I'm trying.
I was listening to the live before. The question before was that, like, are other religions as well, so like Buddhism and Hinduism, are they also permitted to be like so they're allowed to be like, if there is a Buddhist, like, you allow them to worship whatever they're worshiping, right? Like in Islamic state, yeah?
Yes, of course.
Then the question was then asked to me that, for example, if there was a man who's doing that, but then they come to him and they ask him for taxes or something like that, right? And then he said, what do you mean I have to pay taxes? Like in my worship, I don't have to pay taxes. What's this? So
That's a ridiculous question. That's a ridiculous question. No one accepts that kind of nonsense. You have the running of the state, and taxes has nothing to do with your religion. So if there's a contradiction between your religious practice and what everyone else must do in order for a smooth functioning of society, then the latter takes precedent.
Not only this, I mean, in Islam, we don't have taxes, but when we come to the West or other countries where there's taxes, you pay taxes.
Oh, but they have jizya, for example. No. They would have to pay jizya.
The argument they pursue the jizya, so like, I'm just living my life, you leave me alone. Why do you
have to
no.
Well, then in that case, everyone that's making money in the West or whatever should leave me alone. I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to fund Trident. I don't want to fund Trident.
I see.
It's a possible standard. Like they want to live an anarchistic lifestyle, but they want to have the privileges of someone who's living in a fully fledged, socially contracted environment.
It's like those guys
Because at the end of the day, they're paying for their protection.
So it's like those guys who I've seen. They turn up at really well organized marches, but they're actually anarchists.
Yeah.
So they have the anarchist flags.
No, because when if, for example, another country comes and invades them, they will need the protection of the Muslims. That's what it is. If that's the situation. And why should they get the protection of the Muslims? They're not funding it, paying for it.
Police or hospitals or these types of things. Yeah. Okay, brother, reasonable believer.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Can you recommend a book to read up on history? Like, where should I start in terms of like having?
There's a nice book by Gombrich called A Brief History of the World. I think that's a nice start.
Gombrich. How do you spell it?
Gombrich. Sorry, no T. Gombrich. I think.
CH. History of the World.
A Brief History of the World.
There's also Huntington's history books. Not his, just his.
Clash of Civilization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, no.
Who's the second guy?
No, just go with that.
Yeah.
There's a brother, from what I've heard, I haven't read his book yet. It's a Muslim guy, Islamic history. His name is.
Yes. No, Faraz Zabi.
No, Faraz Khatib.
Faraz Abbas or Faraz. Yeah. Just look up.
Faraz something.
Yeah.
And it's called like Islamic Civilizations or something like that.
Yeah. No, Lost Islamic History.
Okay.
Lost Islamic History. Yeah. Look up that.
I've heard good things about it.
Yeah. Jazak.
Okay. Thank you. Barakallahu fikum. Have a nice day.
Yeah. Let's add the.
Go wash my hands and come back.
Yeah, sure. Assalamu alaikum, brother Randall Stroud.
Alhamdulillah.
How are you doing, brother?
Thank you, man, for having me. And I'm so happy to speak with you directly because I discovered you not too long ago, a few weeks ago. I don't really keep up with secular media that much, but I had a friend who contacted me and he said, there's this Netflix movie or show depicting Yeshua or Isa, Jesus, as a gay man. I said, what? I can't believe this. So I started researching and I was very angry, and I discovered your video speaking about this, and you gave such a great defense to Yeshua, Isa, Jesus, saying that this was so horrible. But then you also criticized modern Christianity, progressive Christianity, which just makes a joke out of everything. And I saw a comment that said, it's really sad that that a Muslim is going through such great lengths to defend the Christian Messiah Jesus more than the Christians themselves. And I really salute you. You really do a wonderful job. And me myself, I am a Christian, but I follow the Messianic route, so we follow the Jewish law, but we believe in the Messiah. But I look at my brothers in Islam as our cousins or brothers because they come from the same family as Abraham.
Right.
So for me, my mission or my battle is more so against the progressive movement.
Sure.
That is so strong in the West right now. They pretty much do whatever they want. They eat pork, they get married 5 or 6 times. They criticize Muslims. They criticize Muslims for their women wearing the hijab. But if you look at a Christian nun, they do the same thing, but we say, oh, look how holy they are, look how wonderful they are. So I don't understand why Christians have so much disrespect for Islam when they have more in common with us than the Jews. That's my rant. That's my rant.
I mean, firstly, thank you so much, Randall, for your feedback on that video. When I released that video, I was in Pakistan at the time, and I was surprised at how far it went in the Christian community. I had some really surprising comments from conservative Christians who agreed with me that liberal Christianity is cringeworthy. Liberal Christianity is simply pandering to the left, and it ends up just losing all of its morals and values and ethics, and anything that basically resembles the Christian civility, if you like. And what's interesting about that video is that it highlights again what happens when a religion panders to a populist ideology like liberalism, right? And it will not actually benefit the religion itself, even pragmatically. Like, I'm not a Christian, but even I can see as a non-Christian that the same mistake that some Muslims are making, the liberal Muslims are making, and the liberal Christians have had more interaction with liberalism, so they've done this for a very, very long time. They basically end up watering the religion to the point that the nuclear family is destroyed, right? You start having disrespect towards elderly people, all these types of things. And something which I've spoken about before, which I'm very passionate about, Randall, is that I grew up in this country when it was still more Christian than it is now. I even remember a time in which there was something about the lottery or gambling, and it was seen as bad on TV, and it was mentioned like a sin. Like the advertisers were trying to say, although it's a sin or whatever. I remember when on Sundays you couldn't buy alcohol. There were certain types of things, right? So I even remember in school that, because I went to a Church of England school, right? And in the UK, we have the Church of England, as opposed to, like in America, you have like the different denominations and stuff. So this Church of England school, I remember the Christian teachers had very strong ethics. They had very, strong views on, the way genders, so the way, for example, women would dress, things about abortion. And if those same Christian teachers today said those same things that I heard them say in my school, they would probably be on the front newspapers in England. So the problem is that the church made a strategic decision in the UK to try and water down the religion as much as possible, to try and make it more attractive to young people. And what ended up happening is the young people not only didn't go back to the church, they also then thought, well, it's got nothing to offer. I mean, Christianity, what is it really, there for? What does it actually, how does it actually impact one's life? I'll give you an example of something. So something which is pretty obvious in Judaism and Christianity and Islam is that you cannot have premarital sex. You cannot have sex outside of marriage. That is something which is completely unacceptable. So when this was given up essentially by the Christians in the UK, just okay, we're not going to tell people about fornication. We're going to say, look, as long as you believe in God, and it's fine. And even they made it sort of cool, right? They made it sort of cool to doubt, right? So you had the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's supposed to be like the highest person, right? He is simply saying things like he himself doubted God when something happened. Like, I can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to win over people, saying, look, I doubt just like you doubt. But that is absolute nonsense. It makes people think, what the hell is Christianity anyway? I mean, if you're going to doubt God, if you're not going to have the nuclear family, if you're going to believe in premarital sex, if you're going to believe in clubbing and drinking and whining and dancing and womanizing, what's the difference? Why would I? Yeah,
because modern Christianity has this false doctrine. First, I reject the Trinity as well, which may come as a big surprise.
Yeah, it does actually.
And I'll get into that for a moment. How one can be Christian but also reject the Trinity. But when it comes to these kind of things, modern Christians, they adopt this principle of Christ has done away with the law, and this is nonsense. If we look in the book of Thessalonians, he talks about this. But also, what did our prophet say, you know, Isa, Yeshua, Jesus. He said, I have come to fulfill the law, not to do away with it. But
Yeah.
Christians, they have this doctrine of, I can do whatever I want so long as I say, oh, I'm sorry. But try that in a court of law. If you rob a bank and you go before a judge and you say, hey, I know that I killed this person, but I feel really bad about it. The judge will say, you should feel bad about it. But
Yeah.
Christians take this idea of unlimited forgiveness with no consequence. And when it comes to something like premarital sex, I have a lot of you know, younger people come to me. You know, I'm pushing 40 years old now, and they say, man, you look
Wow,
good
yeah,
for your age. and I say it's because of following God's law. You know, no drinking, you know, no engaging in multiple affairs, because when you're with a woman, it takes a lot of energy from a man to keep a woman happy emotionally, you know. But
yeah. I mean, there's not only that. I mean, just before this, me and Muhammad Hijab, we were in central London. We just finished the Uyghur protest, and it was Saturday night. Saturday night, people are, you know, dressed to impress, and they're walking around on the streets and this type of thing. And I honestly thought to myself, it's such a horrible thing to be able to actually live your life in a way that you have to, like, for example, you'll have a partner one time, and then, you know, they'll have sex and they may leave you, and people just, you know, use each other in these ways. We know through statistics that the more partners someone has before marriage, the more likely they are to get divorced. For anybody that's been through heartbreak, they would know, you know, what happens if a man and a woman are married and then they get divorced. Years later, that man could be thinking about the woman could be thinking about the man. Say if it ended that way, you know, that same thing happens with you know, with somebody who's married, and then they think about their ex-girlfriend, or they think about this. And you know, theism essentially teaches you that these things are tempting, but they're actually bad for you, and it gives you constraints. It actually tells you, don't do this and don't do that. And the fact is, in life, people who are disciplined are successful. People who are not disciplined are not successful. So, you know, it is such a beautiful thing when, as a Muslim or as a Christian or as a Jewish person or someone else of another religion, it gives you those strong morals, right? And you stick to those morals, and you fight, you actually fight your own lower desires to fall towards these things. Because look, people that have been through that life, they've been through all of those things, they'll realize that it's the law of diminishing returns. None of these things actually make you truly happy. You look at these celebrities who have everything in the world, and they're depressed, and they're on antidepressants, and, you know, they shoot themselves. They do these types of things. So the true life, the true happy life is the life with God. So Randall, I really want your email. I want to continue the conversation with you. I'm very interested in your perspective as well, and we can exchange some stuff. But we're going to need to end the live stream soon, because it's been
okay. I want to say one more thing. I want to say one more thing. God is so beautiful, and there is only one God, not three gods. If we look at what Yeshua Christ said, he said, none are good but God. You know, Father, why have you forsaken me? A God would not say this to himself. And one more quick thing, 1 year ago today, I was spared by God. My life was transformed because I was beginning to slip in my faith, not following all of the commandments. And I got into some argument with these religious extremists on the street who were preaching this false doctrine. And a man from the crowd pulled out a gun and began shooting. And alhamdulillah, this bullet scraped the back of my head, and I was spared. And 7 other people were hit, and they had to go to the hospital. And the man who shot me, I forgave him, and now he is turning back to God. And all of the people survive with no permanent injuries. It's an absolute miracle. So anyone who's doubting God and they say that there's no signs or existence of a God, you just have to pay attention. There's no such thing as coincidences. Coincidences are hints from God that he is there and he's watching and he wants you to succeed.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Randall, for
Okay.
sharing that. I mean, it is literally a life-changing experience. I mean, even you're describing it, you know, how your body would react to having a live gun fired at you. It's not the sort of,
Yeah.
it reminds me of that famous Russian writer. Maybe you can remind me of you know what his name is. And you know, he was a rebel at the time of the Tsar, and he was caught. And once he was caught, he went through this mock execution, and at the last minute, you know, before he was supposed to be executed, he was pardoned. And this was just a psychologically traumatic thing that the Tsar was doing to try and control political opponents. But his entire life changed because he realized, hang on a minute, I could have died at that moment, and that was really real for him. So he ended up becoming an amazing writer who was not even wasting a moment of his life. Sun Tzu refers to this as the death ground strategy. You know, when you know that your life's coming to an end, or you know, the rivers behind you and the enemies in front of you, you know, every iota of energy and breath that you have and passion you have, you use towards what is the most important thing. So, you know, thank you for sharing that experience. I mean, I'd like to continue this conversation with you, because I think if you go into the private chat, you can actually put down your email address, right?
Okay.
My email, darwiniandelusions@gmail.com, you'll find in each one of my videos as well. But I'd love to speak to you again and get your WhatsApp number, and we can continue this conversation.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much, man. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you so much, Randall. And for everybody else watching, we are going to be live again, inshallah, next Saturday. I'm sorry we didn't add more people. We're ending it a little bit early. We started a little bit early, but Hijab, I think, had 4 hours of sleep last night. I think I had 4 hours of sleep or thereabouts. We had an entire day of protests, which you can, you know, see online on Twitter and on Iman channel and other sorts of things. Hijab, you want to give a message to the people? There's,
Yeah.
well, if
I'm tired.
all right. Thank you, Randall. I got your email address right there. Okay, so everybody watching, we will be live again, inshallah, next Saturday. Please watch out for that. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And again, apologies to the people in the studio who we did not add, but we'll add you guys next week, inshallah.